Good evening, everyone. Happy
Hello.
President's Day. Happy Monday. Most importantly, happy Friends and Fiction Official Book Club with Brenda and Lisa Monday. And we are so excited tonight because we're going to be discussing our February book club pick. And I'm not going to even make you guys wait because the electricity from the page and the messages have been going all week. Our author has been amazing and active. So I'm going to let my co-host Brenda, I guess I should introduce myself in case you don't know. I'm Lisa, and I'm here with my co-host Brenda, and she's going to introduce our special guest tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. Happy Monday, everybody. And I'm so excited to introduce our guest tonight. Virginia Kantra is the New York Times bestselling author of over 30 novels about strong women, messy families, and the search for a place to call home. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. Her stories have earned numerous awards, including 2 Romance Writers of America's Rita Awards and 2 National Reader's Choice Awards. And prior to tonight's topic of the fairy tale life of Dorothy Gale, her novels Meg and Jo and Beth and Amy, inspired by the classic Little Women, received starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and the American Library Association's book list and praise from People magazine. Married to her college sweetheart, Virginia lives in North Carolina, and we are very excited to see her this evening. Come on in, Virginia.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you everybody who's watching and reading. This makes me feel really special. It makes it a special Monday.
Oh, oh,
Oh,
that's
thank
fantastic.
you.
We are so excited you're here. And this one is kind of close to my heart because I was very much a lover of The Wizard of Oz as a child and reading it to my daughter, um, front to back. And then we'd start the front again and, over and over. And we know you're not new to retellings of the classics. As I mentioned earlier, you did 2 retellings of Little Women. So I'm very excited to be talking about the fairy tale life of Dorothy Gale tonight. It had so many literary references, hidden down in there. But it just really resonated with me because it's about searching for your path and about resilience and fear, really. So it really had a lot to say standing on its own, away from the Wizard of Oz. So here's how we're going to do things tonight. We'll get into questions from readers in a minute, but we'd like for you to give a summary of the book for those watching who haven't read it. And readers, remember, spoilers are okay after 7:15 p.m. and we will give the spoiler warning. And also put any questions you have live in the chat for Virginia. So with that,
Please
I'll
do.
turn it over to you for a summary.
Well, like you, Brenda, I grew up with The Wizard of Oz, and it has a very special place in my heart. I'm old enough to be part of the generation that saw it every year around the holidays, broadcast on TV when you watched things on TV as kind of a national event. And I can remember running into the kitchen to hide when the Dorothy was in the witch's castle, and there's that one moment where she sees her aunt, and her aunt is calling for her, and it's like, Auntie M, Auntie M, don't leave me. And then the globe would glow green, and you'd hear Auntie M, don't leave me. And I would like totally freak out. I was so scared. But even before that, I had The Wizard of Oz was one of the first chapter books I read. I'm an English professor's daughter. My parents' rooms were stuffed with books. Um, but I also inherited some books from my mom. And there is, and I should have, now y'all get to watch my ass while I turn around. Excuse me.
Woo! Look
Virginia,
at
I
us
forgot I was going to want
go.
to do this. Okay. This
oh,
was not my mother's copy, not my grandmother's copy, her uncle's copy, dated
oh,
it says in here, and I mean, look, you guys, for book lovers, like this is
Oh,
the center, um, and
oh,
inside there
wow.
is an inscription to Philip from Aunt Hilda, Christmas 1909.
Wow.
So I had read this one and went to the library, and I'm a big proponent of libraries. And so I read my way through all 14 books of the Oz series, and it has remained a love of mine. I'm not new to writing. I started in romance way back in the day. But
We
as
saw some of those spicy covers.
I mean,
Woo!
I was doing sexy paranormal, and did a lovely set of contemporary romances set on the Outer Banks, which are very family
Mhm.
centric. But I've gotten to a point now where I'm really drawn to the stories that shaped me
Hmm.
as a reader, as a writer, and as a woman. And one of the things I loved about those original Oz stories is that Dorothy was a little girl like me. She is very ordinary. She loses her way, she cries, she loses her temper, she gets hungry. Um, Sometimes she makes unwise choices, but she also has a lot of characteristics that I think we need to see more of in the world. She's kind, she's resilient, she's loyal, um, she's enterprising, which I think puts her like the Alcott sisters among like our
Hmm.
first great American heroines. And so, and she also, and forgive me if I'm going on too long, but I'm trying to talk about why
Hmm.
Oz, right? Why would you do Oz?
Love
No,
it.
that's perfect.
So L. Frank Baum was married to a woman, the daughter of one of the founders of the suffragette movement in the United States. And if you go back to those original Oz books, or you like the movie, or let's look at Wicked, which is now going to be two major motion pictures. We're talking about women in really strong roles. So the women of power, Dorothy herself as a protagonist, Ozma, who was a girl and then briefly a boy, and then a girl who is the ruler. We're always talking about women. And we're talking about how a girl navigates in the world. And so coming back to it as an adult and thinking not only of the inspiration, which I can't tell you how much fun I had putting Easter eggs in this story.
Oh, yes,
Um,
There were plenty of them.
there were, and
and
they were so much fun.
I'm so glad you think so, because that, of course, is always the balance that you're struggling to to hit when you do an homage like this. You need to put the elements that you think are important, that will that will evoke that emotional resonance for yourself and for your readers. And but you don't want to sort of tip into a beat by beat retelling.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of look at it. What was it that I liked? And what I liked was Dorothy herself, because you have this ordinary girl who has a kind heart and kick ass shoes. And she not only finds her power, but she's actually a catalyst for all the other people to find their power. And when I tackled the story of Oz, I was really less interested in a beat for by beat retelling, and more
Right.
interested in what does it mean to be a kind-hearted woman finding your way in the world. And that was the inspiration for my story. So,
Oh, that is
so I should do an elevator pitch, right? You want like a summary for people who have
sure.
no idea what I'm talking about? Dorothy, I've aged her up. She's a graduate student at the University of Kansas because Dorothy, Kansas, has to be.
Right.
Um, she makes an unwise choice to get involved with an older faculty member. He is a best-selling novelist. He pillories her in his best-selling novel, soon to be a major motion picture. And the storm of publicity and the destruction of her reputation within the department sends her across the sea to not the Emerald City, but the Emerald Isle. So I set the story in Trinity College, Dublin, at the writing program there. And we can talk about why Ireland in a little bit, where she makes friends, finds mentors, encounters a humbug and a woman who is referred to all of her students as a witch, and comes into her own power.
Lisa. Okay. Lisa, I think you have a question.
So I just have a comment. Well, there's a couple of comments in the chat. Everyone is blown away by your book. Susan said, wow, what a treasure of a book. Edie says, wow, cool artifact. And I want to mention that our book club member, Debbie, is watching live from Vietnam, and it is Tuesday morning there. So
Oh,
thanks
oh,
for joining us
you,
tomorrow,
Debbie.
Debbie.
Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I want to get back to, since you mentioned Dublin, I'll start with that one, and I want to get back to the some of the things you posted on the page. But I know that you didn't get to Dublin before you started writing, and you didn't get there till later. So how did the real Dublin compare to your research version? And just talk to us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I started writing this book during the pandemic. Remember when we couldn't travel?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And at that point, I wanted not only one, I mean, over the rainbow, yes, I wanted to go anywhere. I wanted to get out of my driveway. And so when I had first talked about the concept for this book with my editor, I had said, and so it's the Emerald City, so she's going to Seattle. And then, I finished Beth and Amy and I got home and I'm starting to write this and I'm going, Seattle. Do I want to go to Seattle? Do I want to spend a year in Seattle? And it just didn't feel big enough. It didn't feel other enough. It didn't feel magic enough. What I really wanted to do was, and I did draw on the book, but I think, again, I'm part of that Wizard of Oz movie generation. So I also wanted to recapture that iconic moment in the movie where the movie's been in black and white and Dorothy's been swept up in this terrible thing. And can't we all relate to that at that moment in our shared history? And she's dumped in Munchkinland. And she opens the gray and white door of her aunt and uncle's black and white farmhouse. And she enters this world of technicolor possibility. And that was the moment that I wanted to capture. And Seattle, which I'm sure is a lovely city and I've been to, was not cutting it. So it was actually my husband, Italian guy, who regularly makes an appearance on my social media pages. And he was the one who said, what if she went to Ireland? And as I
Oh,
frequently
what?
do when he makes these suggestions, is I go, I can't possibly do that, honey. That's a great idea, but just no. And it usually takes me, depending on what he's suggesting, it can take me more or less time to get on board. I was stymied, partly because never been to Ireland, have no connection
Mm.
with Ireland, knew no one in Ireland. I'm setting it in an academic setting, and the educational systems are different in Ireland. Um, so I had doubts. I was very lucky. I worked with the amazing Bernice Murphy, who at that time she's a member of a professor of popular literature at Trinity College Dublin, and at that time was also the postgraduate advisor, and with Deirdre Martin, who is an instructor at the Trinity Writing Center. So I could not have written this book without them. I got a subscription to the Irish Times, and I lived on Google Maps. I can tell you that the graffiti in this book is accurate because of Google Maps and the
I
Irish
love
Times.
it.
Um, so we're
That was
we're at the line edit stage, and we were able to travel. And so in early summer of 2022, we went to Ireland. We went to Dublin. And, I talked about the sense of possibility, the sense of wonder that you want to have, what the sense of coming home, of finding a place where you might belong. I did not expect that I would actually feel those feelings
oh,
from the time our plane landed and we got on a bus to take us to our hotel at 5:30 in the morning, and the sun is rising. So the pink sky in the cover is from a photo that um, of the sunrise over the Grand Canal, the first morning we were in Dublin. Um, and I'm grabbing my husband's arm the whole way. I'm going, we're crossing the River Liffey. I'm like, oh, look, honey, we're in Balls. We went stayed in a hotel in Ballsbridge where Reedy and Tim and then Dee live. Um, I found my way around that. I know that city better than I know my hometown of Philadelphia.
that's so funny. You
Uh,
know, that's just amazing. I wondered because you had posted to someone that you saw the color, the sky with Italian guy, but I didn't realize
yeah,
Italian guy was your husband.
yeah. Um, I'm sure y'all are have everybody has different degrees of comfort with their families
Right.
on social media. When I started, and I have gone from being a Harlequin reader and writer to writing some pretty sexy romantasy to doing romantic suspense that could be very dark. So, and my children have grown up through all of this. So everybody had a another name on Facebook. So early on, my husband he became Italian guy, and so he has his own following almost at this point.
That makes total
Love it.
sense.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's so cool.
Lisa,
Um, I
did you
have
have a
a
question?
yeah, I have two questions, but before that, I just wanted to share two quick comments. Irene says the sense of place was amazing. I felt as if I was there. And Meredith said it really did feel like how Dublin is, and I wanted a Guinness while reading.
I learned
Well,
to
that's a
drink.
good sign.
I think first of all, thank you guys, and I'm just so thrilled to share this with you because that's really what I wanted to do. For anybody who reads the book or listens to this book club, if you get a chance to go to Dublin, you must. And if you go to Dublin, and I don't get a kickback for this, there's something called the literary pub crawl.
Oh,
Ooh,
It's supposed to be 2 hours and four pubs. Uh, So 4 hours later, it's conducted by pretty decent actors, Irish actors, two of them. And you meet at the Duke, which I learned from Bernice is the unofficial pub of the English department at Trinity College. You meet upstairs at the Duke, and they take you on a tour of all of Dublin's famous writers' favorite drinking spots.
Wow.
And while they do it, they act out bits of plays. And so you start with Waiting for Godot, and you go to Brendan Behan, and you do Oscar Wilde, and they just, I mean, it's an amazing experience. I wish I could tell you more about it, but I was drinking Irish whiskey.
Well, that will be good enough for now.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
can tell you
great.
it's an unforgettable, the first hour is an unforgettable experience, and the rest of it is a really wonderful and yet somewhat forgotten experience. But if you go to Dublin, the literary pub crawl is definitely worth doing.
Okay.
Yes, that is right up our alley. So I definitely want to do that. Um, we have a question, and like so many of us, Dee thinks of libraries as her magic kingdom, her refuge, her home. Do you have special memories of a library from your childhood?
Yeah, and now I'm going to get all sentimental and teary.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Oh no.
Um, so I mentioned that I read at home, um, but two of my children's librarians from Ludington Memorial Library in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, are probably responsible for me being a writer.
oh,
They shepherded me through the Oz books and through so many other what they curated my books for me. My parents were not nothing we they never censored anything. I mean, I was pulling, the Rape of the Lock and Paradise Lost off my father's bookshelves, but Mrs. Wormuth would hand select books and give them to me, and I had my first job at the library. I was 15 years old, and I volunteered shelving books. I met children's author Lloyd Alexander, whose amazing Pride and
Oh,
Chronicles were based on Welsh legend and mythology. And he came, and now I look back and I think it was me and my sister and maybe, I mean, under 10 kids. And I remember him sitting at a little round table with us and talking and taking me seriously when I said I wanted to be a writer when I grew up. This
wow.
is what libraries do. I think libraries are, the last bastion of civilization in the world. It's like medieval
well, that
times.
is a
It's like we need our libraries. Yes,
Yes.
library was home. Library was my enchanted castle and my refuge. Yes, all of them.
Love that. Um, Edie would like to know, first she said she loved the book, but she'd like to know, how did you decide which character would replicate the character from The Wizard of Oz?
And I'm going to jump in and say we are past 7:15, so spoilers are
Hmm.
fine if you in your answer.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, since we're starting at the beginning, that's not too. I mean, D is D, right? I knew she had
right.
to be kind. I knew she had to be from Kansas. I made her a writer. I'm going off topic, and I'm sorry. Well, I swear I'll circle
No.
back around. Um, at the beginning of the book, she is. I know it sounds kind of political, but she is defined by the male gaze, right? Her boyfriend, lover, shithole. Sorry.
We're all
Her,
adults here. We're all adults
right.
here.
I mean, it's oops, not in the children's room at the library. We're good. Um, but her Grayson Kettering puts her in his book, and he decides who she's going to be. She is defined by him, and that is how the world sees her. And one of the reasons I made her a writer is it was very important for me that she define herself. And I could have done it in other ways, but I wanted to do it that way. Um, I wanted her to have the complete agency to write her own story. So I made her a writer. So that was D. Aunt Em and Uncle Henry are Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. One difference I made, I can't remember if they're married or Aunt. No, I'm okay. Sometimes I'll buzz out because I'm currently writing a story called Anne of a Different Island.
Yes, and we want to
So
ask you about that a little bit later.
later.
You're checking
No,
off our list for
Yeah,
us
you're hitting
too.
all of our questions.
sorry. So
You
but clearly I have no trouble talking, so we won't run out. I swear. So Em and Henry um, are pretty much Em and Henry.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that happens in the original book is that Dorothy discovers what M actually means to her and how much she is loved. And edging into spoiler territory here, it was important for me that that be part of her journey. Um, Scarecrow, I borrowed both from the book, where anytime they encounter a problem, the Scarecrow has the brains to figure it out. And yet he is constantly presented and self identifies as a character with no brain.
Mhm.
In the movie, when he is finally meets the wizard, who is a bit of a humbug, but the wizard says there are lots of men from the finest universities who have no more brain than you do and go on and are very successful. What do they have that you don't? A diploma. And the wizard awards him a diploma. So I was thinking about, when I was thinking of Sam, I was like, what do you do if you take someone who is really smart and he doesn't have the diploma? So that's why I set it on Sam as someone who had started at Trinity as a scholarship student, and then didn't finish. So that was Sam. The original backstory of the Tin Man in the books, which doesn't come through in the movie, is that it's a love affair gone terribly, horribly wrong. I don't know how much y'all remember of this, but he falls in love with the daughter of a witch, and she enchants his axe, and he, like, literally, it's almost like that Monty Python Black Knight scene where he, like, lops off various body parts in, so the Tin Man, I knew that there had to be some large romantic disappointment or disaster in his past. Um, and I wanted to also play with how could you take someone who was, and the Tin Man, also in the books and in the movie, is actually feels things passionately and doesn't show it.
Mhm.
Well, there is one nationality that is famous for that, and that's the Brits. So
That's true.
Tim Woodman, I know I really kind of forced that one, but Tim Woodman then became the Tin Man. Ricci Carr, um, because this is a book about women and about the power of women, and I think women's friendship is so important in empowering us, I did
Yes.
not want all of Dee's best friends and companions to be men. I wanted her to have a sister of the heart. And
Yeah.
she needed to have a reason to be at Trinity. She needed to have a flaw of courage. Reedy is actually fiercely loyal. Her name, Dilreet,
Mm-hmm.
means lioness. Um,
Did not pick up on that.
Love
But
that.
you did have several references to bravery and lion, so it was in
yeah,
there.
she's
Mm,
And I
she's
hate to
she's
interrupt you, but I did want to ask you about Reedy because I had listened to the Always Authors podcast with Sonali Dev, and it was just wonderful to hear about your long friendship with her. She's been on our book club before. So how did
yeah.
Sonali help shape Reedy?
well, initially I reached out to her to make sure I wasn't getting anything disastrously wrong. I think I think that if you're writing about an experience which is very different from yours, you want to make sure that you are respectful of the tradition and the culture that you're writing about. For the record, Sonali is not Punjabi. She is not Sikh. Um, she does not live in London, but she knows people. She has friends who are all of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I had questions, I was able to reach out to her and she could track it down for me. So, for example, even when it was something as minor as in the back cover copy, um, I would write something like so for the Sikhs, the men are frequently have the last name of Lion Singh, and it is traditional for women because you are all equal sons and daughters, so all
Mm-hmm.
and brothers and sisters. So all men have the surname of Singh, all women have the surname of Kaur. Now, in practice, that has fallen a little bit by the wayside. A lot of times they'll use Singh or Kaur as a middle name instead.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so, and these are all things that you can find out if you're doing research. But then I did the back cover copy, and I make a big thing about how her father is um, Chef Singh in London, and then on the back it's Riti Kaur, and the copy editor is quite appropriately questioning this. And so it was so wonderful to be able to go back to Sonali and say, I have Riti Kaur and Bobby Singh, and I'm ready to die on that hill unless you tell me I shouldn't. And she's like, die on the hill. So it was it was good for, especially in London apparently. So it was good for me to be able to always have that. We talked quite a lot about how Reedy has her own romantic storyline, and um, I wanted to check on whether that felt appropriately authentic to Sonali. So she was wonderful there. So like there was a lot of just technical stuff that you do.
Yeah.
Um, but of course, what really did it is the more I wrote Reedy, who is a dear friend like a sister to Dee, the more she took on some of the personal qualities of Sonali, who is a dear friend like a sister to me. So there
Oh,
was that. Um, so she probably I mean, not that they're identical, but she probably informed, and in her passion for fighting the patriarchy and advancing women's power empowerment, that's a Sonali thing for sure.
and I'm so glad that she maintained that, but still wound up with Veer, and they were, their relationship was successful. Speaking of relationships, we have been almost 35, we've been 35 minutes without talking about, you know, the love
Ooh.
interests. So I think,
Well,
Lisa, we should turn it over to you.
I think we all know that I'm all about a book boyfriend. So my question is, Sam and Tim are both possible love interests for Dee. So for everyone watching, please let us know in the chat, do you think she made the right choice for her? Are you team Sam or team Tim? That's what I want to know. And then for Virginia, did you have doubts about which way Dee would go as you were writing?
So one of my earliest crushes was on the Scarecrow.
Oh,
Ah.
I mean,
So
we're
cute.
talking early crushes. Um, so I thought she would end up with the smart guy who's operating from about the same place. I would guess I'm not the only woman who has fond memories of someone who was Mr. Right Now.
I love it.
I didn't want so I think she was going to end up with Sam at the beginning of the book. I think I probably, when I started it, I probably did. And I didn't want to undersell I mean, I know that there's the fated mates and insta love and the power of sexual attraction. Love all that stuff. But I think, especially for someone who's coming out of what was really a toxic relationship, for her to go right out of one relationship and then right into another without spending a little time figuring out what she likes and what she deserves, makes her happy ending less convincing. So I kind of liked her having a stutter step on her way to true love.
I love it.
and
Stutter step.
and I thought, boy, if you're gonna take a stutter step, why not with Sam? um,
I
they
love
had
it. Well,
a
I really
I
thought
know.
it was going to be
I love it.
Sam near the beginning as we were learning more about him, and he was so
Yeah,
literary and,
I did
approachable.
too.
Yeah.
yeah, I did that
I'm
on
Team
purpose. I'm
Tim. I'm
sorry.
Team Tim.
Team
No, that
Tim.
was great.
So
That was
so
great.
if you have the book, I have it mine behind me, and I can show you my jeans again. If you look at the dedication,
Oh, okay. Do you want me to read it?
sure.
Oh, this book is dedicated to Michael. Thank you for being my Tim and also my Sam,
Oh,
but mostly Tim.
oh, oh.
I
I
love
did
it.
the audio. I do audio a lot, so I did not hear that part. So that's a pleasant
So
surprise.
I will tomorrow on the loop, if I can still hang out with you guys tomorrow on the Facebook page, if I can still hang out with
Yes.
you guys a little bit. I will post the chocolate chip recipe book from the book. You
Oh, yay.
Yes. Thank
know
you.
that
You're a forever member now. You're stuck with us now. So
my husband, after he left corporate, which he did, he was a suit. But he then opened a coffee shop, which he ran for 22 years, and did
Oh,
all his own baking. And so, and again, I mentioned that I wrote this book during the pandemic, and one of the things that kept us sane was watching the Great British Menu and the Great British Baking Show.
baking show. Hmm.
love it.
So Tim bakes,
Very cool.
I
and
love that about Tim.
I
If
know. We
he
love
can
a
bake me
man
right.
some
that cooks.
scones.
Do you want the scone recipe? I had
Sure.
this.
Oh my,
So
yes.
what happened is I had Italian guy create recipes for various things in the book. And they are all original recipes and they are amazing. So
Oh,
I
wow.
have a Earl Grey scones with lavender icing. I have the chocolate
Ooh.
chip cookies, which are the very American cookies, which I probably should have pulled that out a little more. The British don't make cookies; they make biscuits, which are not like American cookies. But he makes her chocolate chip cookies. Um,
Yes, I love
and
Earl
then I
Grey
thought
too, so
Sam
I would love that
desserts
scone.
equal time. So there are some Irish baps, which are a lovely floured roll, and there are some Irish soda bread scones. So they're yeah. Anyway, I'll post whatever anybody wants, but they're all created
Wonderful.
for the book.
Thank you. Thank you. I will have to say the chat is super excited about the recipes, but it's an overwhelming response for Team Tim. I have yet to see a Team Sam person yet. Couple people say they like Sam too, but everyone is Team Tim. So, but I love Edie's comment. She said, I adored how Reedy always called Dee's old boyfriend a jerk and worse. That's a true friend. Yep, we all have
Yeah.
those
Oh,
friends.
Well, and that was
absolutely.
another
Absolutely.
weird thing about writing, not in America, is they don't use the same words to mean the same things. So, an ass in Ireland and England is a donkey.
Hmm.
An arse is something else.
Ah,
And it's that kind of thing where if you're an American writer and you're writing British or Irish characters, you have to go through and get your slang right. So
that's
That's
hilarious.
important. I have another question for you. There were so many things in this book that I connected with, but I'm big on book boyfriends, and I'm also a witchy person. Like I love witchy things. And one of my favorite quotes from the book was women who tell the truth are always called witches, Maeve says. So, who are the influential women in your life and what truths did they tell you? And this goes to the chat too. Who are your influential women in the
that,
chat?
that's a great question. Um, wow. I'm going to say my mom, but sorry about my clock.
I love the
Um,
clock.
I usually try to remember to stop it, but by the time I get over there and hold it, it'll be done. Um, but like D with Aunt M, I did not grow up identifying myself as my mother's daughter.
Ah.
I was my dad's daughter. And I think it took me longer than it should have. I think one of the tasks of your 20s is to figure out that your parents are human and maybe who they are. And probably the task of your 30s is to love them anyway. Um, I think it took me a while to see how strong my mother is and how loving my mother is, and to a certain extent, how much of my own tenacity I get from my mother. It was not obvious to me as a child or a young woman. So my mother was certainly a mentor there, but she never. I mean, other than giving me uh, Amy Vanderbilt's book of etiquette as an engagement present. I'm I'm I don't I don't remember any particular words of wisdom that I can go say, or always take care of your eyes, your teeth, and your feet because you'll always have those. Um, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, or yeah, it's just. Mhm. I mean, some of the lessons I learned from my mom are not don't lend themselves well to cross stitching on a pillow. Um, but she's my mom, and I've got her in my bones. There were other the Mrs. Wormuth and Mrs. Garwood from Ludington Library. Um, when I had read my way through the entire children's collection, they sent me downstairs to read Georgia Heyer and Mary Stewart. Um, so I got those were my first adult books, and they both had real elements of romance in it, and I think that always stayed with me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Um, Mrs. Ferdinand, my AP English teacher in
Oh,
high
I love
school.
that so much.
So the way I feel about librarians, I feel the same way about teachers. Um, so yeah, I mean, there I should have these big aspirational models, and maybe I do. I mean, I have fictional heroines, but the women in my life who gave me pieces of the truth to follow, they're teacher, librarian, and mom.
That's
Pretty
awesome.
standard.
I love it. I love it.
I know. I love that so much. We've got quite a few answers in the chat. A lot say their mom. Uh, the grandmother. Leslie said her grandmother. Cindy says her aunt. Doreen said her sister-in-law. And we have quite a few teachers, librarians, and a couple of comments regarding the witchy quote too. Everybody loves that quote too.
Well, I
And
So
mine
think
also was
that
an AP English teacher, one of mine. So
yeah.
and one of the impetuses for me in writing this book. I mean, I think that um, Elphaba and Glinda or Galinda certainly came into their own in Wicked, right? But I think that there's a whole level of women's wisdom that
mm,
as a society, I mean, so this is on a less personal level. Um, I had a great midwife when my children were born,
Yeah.
um, who knew things that my OB didn't. I think that I hope I have been helpful to my daughter and my daughters in law as they've encountered just various health things where I can say, this is normal, try that, things I know. And I think that right now we need women's voices and we need
Yeah.
women's wisdom and women need to feel empowered. And does that get them called witches or worse? Yeah, it does.
sometimes it does. Yes.
I mean, you take a, a woman with talent and ability and visibility and agency, and she's going to get, I mean, hello, Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah.
She's going to become a target. She's going to get called names. So women who tell the truth have always been called witches. Yeah, I'm stand right behind that one.
And thank
Wow.
you for having it in your book. I want it on a t-shirt. I want it on all the things, on a mug.
Okay, your birthday, next birthday present. I got you. I had a quick question before we wrap up because I cannot believe it. It's like 9 minutes to 8. This has gone
Oh my
so
gosh,
fast.
no
But I
way.
wondered were there any scenes that you wrote in Fairy Tale Life that didn't make it that you wish had made it into the book?
No,
Oh,
this
good.
That's awesome.
We got it all.
I don't.
That
I mean,
is
like
the
I'm thinking
best.
about it. There were a couple of book of scenes that almost didn't make it into the book that
Oh.
that did. I mean, in other words, there were scenes that when I originally started writing the book, I had no idea that I needed them. So, for example, okay, big spoiler. So if you don't want to hear this, just, you know, you're warned.
Yeah.
That scene where she talks to her advisor at the end of the book.
Hmm.
I didn't know when I started writing the book how important it was going to be for her to return home and say her piece, have her Me Too moment, and have a moment of accountability. It's like yes, she moved on and she's a survivor, not a victim, but I also wanted her to have her moment of accountability, both with Grace and Kettering, and with her faculty advisor at the University of Kansas, who is not based on any real person. Um, so I should put that in there. But I knew there had to be a showdown with Gray. I didn't know when I started where it would be.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, I love that scene. Let me
Yeah.
just say.
Well, that and okay, so that's another place. This is why I think it's sometimes wonderful to be working with another writer. I can tell you, Sonali read the book up to that point and said and was like, okay, I love this and this, and she needs to kill him with her words. So I remember going back in and deepening and sharpening the dialogue in that scene, to make her more victorious, you know. um, and then I decided, no, she needs to go all the way. She needs to also then go back to KU and do something about that. So generally, no, I'm a very slow and deliberate writer, and if I really think it needs to be in the book, it's in the book. um,
Yay. I
Wonderful.
love
I'm
that.
blessed with a great editor that way too, I think.
Well, the last thing that I wanted to ask you, since you do such a fabulous job with taking classic stories and making them relevant, not that they weren't relevant before, making them contemporary, retelling some. But my question is, what is a classic story that you would like to attempt?
Well, of course, what I'm doing right now, is, and it is not, I don't, it's tough when you call something a retelling.
Yeah, it's a tough word. That's I'm like, not retelling, but
It's so I tend
homage.
to
You
go with
said it earlier,
inspired
homage.
by or an homage or a reimagining, because the problem you have is that when you take on something that's well known, you choose something that's well known in part, or mostly, I think, I hope, because it evokes something in you. There's a feeling, there's a lesson, there's a character that hasn't let you go. And the same is true. Uh, and if you're lucky, if you choose a story that's well known, like Little Women, What Was I Thinking? Like The Wizard of Oz, like Watch Me Get Killed by Canadians for the next one, because and Canadians are nice people. Um, but I'm actually another of these formative books of my childhood was Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, I thought that might be it.
Love
Can
it.
I just, I want to talk about that, but I want to ask our book club members, what classic story would you like to see Virginia tackle? We'll see what we get from
Yeah.
there. But so it's about Anne of Green Gables. Wow.
Well,
Or it's
actually,
an
it's
homage.
in both the Little Women books and in the Wizard of Oz. Um, the original books don't exist. So the March sisters in Meg and Joe and Beth and Amy are the only March sisters. They make reference to those other classic sisters, the Bennets from Pride and Prejudice, but they don't talk about Louisa May Alcott's creations because Louisa May Alcott's creations don't exist in that universe. In the Wizard of Oz, and again, huge spoiler. Um, it's about Dorothy sifting through her own experience to write the Wizard of Oz. Um, but in Anne of a Different Island, that's a book about imagination. That's a book about what does fiction do for us? Well, fiction comforts us and it points us in a direction and it inspires us. And, but there's a point at which we also have to, it's not a substitute for living life.
Mm.
Reading about life is not a substitute for living life. And so Anne of a Different Island is about a smart, imaginative um, young woman who grows up on Mackinac Island in Michigan, which is horse-drawn carriages and small town and beautiful nature as you know, it's not Prince Edward Island, but it has the similarities. And her name is Anne. So of course, who does she identify with more than anyone? But then, and she gets engaged to a doctor who she's convinced with hazel eyes, who must be Gilbert.
I
And
love it.
then her life doesn't pan out along the fictional path she has set for herself. And so Anne of a Different Island is about, I guess, like the fairy tale life of Dorothy Gale. I'm really interested in this. How do you find your own way? How do you know who you are? How do you tell your own story? And so
And
it's life and love are not exactly as she read about them or imagined them to be.
and when does Anne of a Different Island come out?
We have no idea. Um,
Okay, so you're still writing them in the
I
throes
am,
of it.
I am, I sort of did this scramble before I turned on my camera so that you could not see the piles of disordered papers all over my desk.
Okay,
It's
well,
due
that's all
November
right. We'll
1st.
check back in.
We assume
We'll
it'll get
check
Yes.
back in
out
later.
at the end of next year or the beginning of the following year. How's that?
Well, we'll
Wonderful.
keep in
Maybe, well,
touch
next
for
maybe
sure
not
to
next
keep
year. Yeah.
keep we've got quite a few people in the chat with their suggestions. Doris said Charlotte's Web.
Ooh.
Dorothy said Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Susan said The Secret Garden, which I think
Oh.
that's also
That's
Brenda's.
mine. That's my answer.
The She also said The Little Princess. Cindy said Peter Pan. Jeff says Little Women. You're in luck, Jeff. She has already done that with her first, or not first, but her two books, Meg and Joe and Beth and Amy. So check them out, Jeff. Um, Leslie also said Secret Garden. June says Little Princess.
I love that book. I
Well,
loved
you
both of
So
those books.
you
can
have a
go
lot of
back.
work to do, Virginia.
My
Well, you know,
choice would,
I'm at the point now where I'm really kind of taking them one at a time, and I am always very aware of the fact that even as you evoke someone else's, I mean, like when you rely on the emotional power evoked by the original work, but you are not recreating or replacing the original work. And so there are always people who are going to be drawn to it because they hear the echoes that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
And there are
Mhm.
also people who will be convinced you got it all wrong because you got it all wrong for them. And
Gotcha.
that's totally valid. Um, but as a writer, you can't let that noise in your head when you're writing. You have to always go, what are the emotions that I have associated with this story? What of my experience? And this was especially true, I think, with Little Women. What are my experiences of work and love and creativity and the need to make money and negotiating intimacy and control that I can bring to it that were outside of Louisa May Alcott's experience? Not because she wasn't a brilliant writer and a wise woman, but because we live in different times and have had very different lives. So
Amazing.
it's it with each one. And when my editor and I were talking about Anne of Green Gables, I said, you know, there have has been at least one other retelling that I'm aware of. You have to know the job of a good homage, and reimagining, is the job of all good fiction. You have to have something to say. You have to have something of your
Mm-hmm.
own to say. You have to have your own way into the story. So, I mean, a book I will never touch. This is sort of the opposite of the question. I will never go near Narnia.
Ah,
Oh, yeah.
Can't.
Makes
Can't. I have
sense.
nothing to add. I have nothing to say. I am once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen in Narnia. I
I
just,
love it.
um, I read those books. I'm 7 years old, and my faith is that simple, and my belief is that uncomplicated. Um, so there's a book
Yeah.
that meant everything that I'll never
That's
touch.
a Oh,
Well, for
I'm
me,
glad that
I
came out as your answer. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Lisa.
No, I was just gonna say for me, my pick would be um Little Red Riding Hood. But I think Brenda has one last wrap-up question. We've gone over a
Oh,
little bit, but our members are hanging in. But we want to make sure we get this one in because our members will not be happy with us if we don't.
yes. What I wanted to ask Virginia is if someone doesn't have a signed copy of your book, where can they go to find one?
Um, so bookmarks should still have some in Winston-Salem. Quail Ridge should still have them in my hometown. If and you can always with Quail Ridge, when you go to the order page, if you put in the comments, please hold for Virginia to sign, then I can, if they don't have enough signed copies on hand, I can get down there and do it. Page 150, 158 books the same. Since you've been so kind as to invite me back, I can post. I'll do a post tomorrow and have a couple different bookstores that, I mean, and they're all wonderful. They're all indies, and I would love it if you would support them. So I'm happy to put different links rather than to just plug one.
That would be
Thank
wonderful.
you.
And since you mentioned putting it on the page, Virginia has been so wonderful as to post several interesting items. One is her Spotify playlist for the book. And if you haven't seen it on our page, that's a really cool one. So
Yes.
look to the page for that and for her recipes and her list of independent bookstores that will
Yeah.
have
They'll
signed
all
And
copies.
the
be
map of Dublin.
in the map of
Oh, and the map of
Dublin.
Dublin.
And it'll all be under the feature. The ones that she's posted already are already under featured, so you can easily find them. And as she posts, we'll continue to put them on the featured tab so they don't get lost in other posts.
I I love all the posts. I love seeing what everybody's reading and recommending. That's been a real joy of popping in and out this week. So thank you for that,
Oh,
everybody.
wonderful. Well, we are,
Thank
I just
you.
can't tell you how pleased we are that you joined us tonight. It has been such a
Yeah,
pleasure, and I know we ran a little bit over, but it was just a wonderful experience. Thank
such
you
a
so much,
delight.
Virginia.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank
Oh,
you so
wonderful. Take
much.
care.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, that was so
It
good.
was lovely. I loved her so much. I wanted to talk to her for I they we do these and they always seem like they go by too quick. Like, but I swear I felt like this one went by in a flash.
It did. It did
Like
because it was
twice
so
as fast as
fascinating.
normal. I mean, we were sitting there and we hadn't even said spoiler yet and it was like 7:30 and I'm like, "Oh my God, where's the time going?" And I'm tired, we're in the after show. If y'all have not
Right.
if you haven't been on our page in a couple of days, you might have known. We've been in Savannah at the book festival, so we're a little tired. We're a little,
We're a little tired. Yeah.
have a Savannah. We wish, a Savannah hangover. We miss our book friends and our book club friends and all of the amazing authors we've met. I am telling you what, this was probably the best book club discussion to have coming back from that weekend because it was
Yes.
fantastic. I just loved everything about it, and she's been so great with her posts, and now she's gonna share recipes, and I know the lavender icing scones, I'm not a baker, but someone is gonna make those, I'm sure, and when you do, post photos, please, so we
Well,
can all
I like Earl Grey
salivate.
tea, so I
Yes!
may do it. Yeah.
We had a couple of people comment on that. Thank you guys for staying in, and I see that Kay Moser is watching, so hey, Kay. I want you guys
Okay.
all to check her out. She has, if my memory serves me right, I believe she has a book coming out tomorrow. If you're with us, Kay, put your book title in the chat, and I will definitely say it while we're sitting here in our after show. If not, we'll post it on the page. But happy pub day tomorrow, Kay. We love you. Um, yay! And Molly's watching. We just met Molly in person over the weekend,
For
and it
the
was
first
a
time.
highlight for sure.
Yes.
Necks were hugged and other things we won't discuss. I'm just kidding.
But we had a great time with all of our book club members. It was so fun to have, that time together. And
Yeah.
the meetup Saturday night was awesome. So thanks again, everyone who was able to come. I did want to mention Lisa in case so we don't forget it. We're going to have a kind of a cool happy hour later this month. It is going to be our usual happy hour with Ron Block, but it's going to be on February 29th on Leap Day at 7:30 Eastern Time. And that night we'll be announcing our upcoming books for April, May, and June.
Yay. I'm excited for leap year, happy hour, and the special guest. And I did want to confirm that Kay's book that's pubbing tomorrow is called Celebration. That's what I thought, but I did not want to say the wrong thing because I have a million book
Yes.
titles going through my head.
I hope
So,
I can
y'all
find
check
it.
it out.
I won't try to find it now, but yes. And then I definitely want to mention our March pick that will be
Ooh,
coming up.
yes, I have the box right here.
And it is
Yay.
a love song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams, who was at the Savannah Book Festival. So we are looking forward to that. And I'm going to stop sharing so that Lisa can show you what she has.
Yes. We want to thank Tia and her amazing team for sending this box. I'm covering up my address because y'all don't need to know where I live.
Yes.
So we got the box, and when you open it,
That's a pretty cool box.
Yep. And then we've got beautiful tissue paper
Just fling it. Fling it.
that comes all to the finished copy. Woo! There we go. Ta-da! I can't wait for this. It's a beautiful book. So March 18th, is that right?
Yes.
Or is it 9th? Okay. Or
Wait.
19th.
18th.
March 18th,
March 18th.
7 p.m. Eastern. And she is actually going to be on the Friends of Fiction main show on Wednesday night this week. So
That's right.
you
This
can
week.
this week you can see her on Wednesday on Friends and Fiction. And then we get to take a deep dive into a love song for Ricky Wilde next month on the book club. Yay!
Oh, thanks you guys for hanging in there with us. We're a little bit late today, but we had a fabulous time talking about, and I think I'm going to flip back through again too and just look again at some of the references because it was so cool. But thanks again for sticking with us, and we are looking forward to the happy hour and our March pick. Both going to be pretty cool. So, good night and happy reading.
Good night. PB&J out.